She opened my door without warning, slipped off her dress, and said, "Move over." Cale Raines lived in the quiet part of Dock Ring 9, where the walls hummed soft and steady like a sleeping beast. The station was old, the kind of place people forgot unless they needed repairs done cheaply and fast. Cale liked it that way. He fixed antenna arrays, patched coolant lines, and rebuilt junker shuttles that should have been scrapped years ago. He kept his door locked, his tools organized, and his life small. That night started like any other. A maintenance shift ended late, so he ate a simple meal and checked the station board for new work. Nothing urgent. A few small contracts. A warning about power flickers in Sector C. Cale made a note to inspect the breakers tomorrow. He washed his hands, wiped grease from under his nails, and turned down the lights. Outside his narrow window, the stars looked like scattered salt. Inside, his room smelled faintly of metal and engine cleaner. Quiet settled around him. He almost let himself relax. Then his door clicked. Cale sat up, instantly alert. The lock light on the panel stayed green, but he had not touched it. That did not make sense. He moved slowly, reaching for the small multi-tool on his bedside shelf. It was not a weapon, but it was solid metal in his hand. The door slid open without warning. A figure stepped in, fast and silent, as if she knew exactly where the floor creaked and where it did not. Cale saw a young alien woman, tall and slim, her skin a pale blue-gray with a soft pattern like faint mist along her cheeks. Her hair, deep red, almost copper, was tied back in a rough knot. Her eyes were wide and bright, the kind of eyes that had seen danger and had not yet decided if it was over. She did not look like a tourist. She did not look like station security. She looked like someone running out of time. Cale started to speak, but the woman raised a hand, palm forward, a quiet signal to stop. Her breathing was controlled, but her shoulders were tense. She listened, head tilted slightly, as if she could hear footsteps through the metal walls. Then, without looking away from him, she reached up and slipped off her outer garment. It was not what Cale first thought. It was not some casual clothing move. It was a heavy travel layer, an overdress used like a cloak, stitched with thin insulating lines and small sensor patches. Under it, she wore a fitted utility suit with seams at the joints and a belt full of small tools and sealed pockets. The overlayer dropped to the floor like a shed skin. Cale's confusion sharpened into suspicion. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low. "How did you open my door?" She stepped closer, and Cale noticed the marks on her wrists. Faint bruises, like restraints, had been there recently. He also noticed something else. A small triangular device clipped near her collar. It blinked once, then went dark. The alien woman looked at the narrow bed beside him, then back at Cale, and said in a clear, steady voice, "Move over." Cale stared. "What?" "Please," she added quickly, and the single word carried the weight of someone trying very hard not to panic. "They're scanning doors. If they find me in a corridor, I am finished. If they find me in a room alone, they will take me again." Again. That one word cut through Cale's confusion. Cale did not move yet. Who is they? The station lights flickered, just once. Somewhere far down the hall, a loud metallic clank echoed as a service hatch opened and closed. The alien woman flinched at the sound. "Not security," she whispered. "Not law. Hunters. Paid. Quiet. Efficient." Cale's instincts shouted at him to push her out and lock the door. His other instincts, the ones that had kept him alive on harsh repair jobs, told him the worst choice was to act without thinking. He took a slow breath. "Name," he said. Her eyes met his. "Sarah." Cale kept his grip on the multi-tool. "How did you open my door, Sarah?" She hesitated. Then she pointed toward the lock panel. "Your lock is old. Your neighbor modified the hinge last month." I watched. I copied. I did not break it. I persuaded it. Cale did not like that. But he also understood it. Old stations had old systems. Sometimes a person could open a door with patience, a wire, and knowledge. Sarah moved closer to the bed. Her posture was not suggestive. It was tactical, like she was choosing the spot with the best chance of surviving the next 10 minutes. She glanced at the closet, the vents, the small maintenance panel near the floor. "Lie down," she said. "Now," Cale's jaw tightened. "You do not get to order me around in my own room." Sarah's face tightened too, but she did not argue. She reached into a pocket on her belt and pulled out a thin crystal shard, the size of a finger. It looked like clear glass, except faint lines moved inside it like trapped lightning. Cal felt a strange pressure in his ears, like the room had changed air density. Sarah held the shard out. "This is why," she said. "If they find it, they erase me. If they do not find it, they still erase me. The only difference is whether the truth survives." Capel did not take it. "Truth about what?" Sarah swallowed. "About a strike. About a plan. About your people." Cale's stomach tightened. "Humans?" Sarah nodded. "Barely. Colonies. Outposts. Ships in transit. A pattern of disappearances that looks like accidents. It is not accidents." Cale felt cold creep up his arms. He had heard rumors. Everybody on the edge heard rumors. A ship vanished here. A trade convoy late there. People blamed pirates, bad engines, misjumps. Out here, space swallowed mistakes without leaving bones behind. Sarah stepped closer and lowered her voice even more. "I was a courier. I carried copies. My superiors said it was routine. Then I learned the copy was the original. The only one. They lied. Then they tried to keep me." Cale looked again at her wrists and understood the bruises were not from a rough day. They were from people who did not ask permission. The hall sound changed. A soft vibration, like heavy boots on metal. Cale's mouth went dry. "They are here?" Sarah nodded. "Quiet. They do not announce. They do not argue. They enter, they take, they leave." Cale's room was small. There was no back door. Only a vent, and even that led into station ducts with security grates. Cale's mind ran quick paths, finding dead ends. He glanced at the ceiling vent. "Can you fit?" Sarah followed his gaze. "Maybe. But not with them so close. And the ducks are watched. They know the station." Cale's heart hammered. He hated this. He hated that his quiet life had just been grabbed and shaken. A beep sounded in the hall. A scanning beep, faint but sharp. Sarah moved fast. She stepped to the bed and pulled a thin cover over the top, then glanced at Cale again. "Move," she repeated, softer. "Please." Cale made a decision, not because he trusted her, but because he trusted his own ability to judge danger. If hunters were scanning doors, then sending her out would make his door the next one. It would make him involved anyway. He slid to the side of the bed and lifted the cover. Sarah lay down fully dressed in the utility suit, her body rigid with tension. She pulled the cover up to her shoulders and for a brief moment she looked like a person trying to pretend this was normal. It was not normal. Cale lay down beside her, not touching, leaving space. He kept the multi-tool hidden in his palm. He turned his head slightly, listening. The scanning beep stopped right outside his door. Cale's breath caught. The lock panel light glowed faintly. A shadow shifted under the door seam. Then came a soft knock. Not loud. Not official. Just a tap, like a question that expected a wrong answer. Cale did not speak. A second knock. Slightly firmer. Sarah's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. She was not blinking. Cale forced himself to breathe slow. If he acted scared, they would smell it. If he opened the door, he might die. If he stayed silent, he might still die. A voice came through the door, calm and flat, translated by the station's basic language system. Maintenance check. Open for inspection. That was a lie. Station maintenance did not inspect private rooms at midnight. They filed forms. They complained. They asked for tips. Cale stayed silent. The voice continued, still calm. This will be quick. Cale's thoughts raced. If they had authority, they would override the lock. If they did not, they would try tricks first. That meant they were not official. That meant the station might not protect anyone. Sarah's hand moved slightly under the cover. She slid something toward Cale. A small disc, flat and black, the size of a coin. Cale felt it press into his palm. He did not look down. He whispered through barely moving lips, "What is this?" Sarah whispered back, "Signal dampener." If they have a scanner, it bends it. Not perfect. But maybe. Cale closed his fingers around it. He did not know if it would work. But he knew one thing for sure. Sarah had come here on purpose. Not randomly. She had chosen his door. The voice outside said, "Open the door." Cale's eyes drifted to the lock panel. He remembered something. Dock Ring 9 had a flaw in its power line. When Sector C flickered, certain panels would reset for half a second. Tomorrow, he had planned to fix it. Tonight, it might save him. Cale shifted slightly and reached toward the wall near the bed, where a small maintenance socket sat behind a cover plate. He had installed it himself. It connected to the room's power feed. He pulled the plate open with a careful movement under the blanket, hiding it from the door's narrow camera strip. Outside, there was a new sound, the soft buzz of a tool touching the lock. They were done asking. Cale pressed the coin-like dampener against the metal bed frame as if grounding it. He did not know why he did that. It just felt right. Then he slid 2 fingers into the socket and twisted the bypass pin. The lights in the room dipped, then flared. In the hall, the lock panel beeped in confusion. Sarah's eyes widened, and for the first time since she entered, Cale saw hope flicker across her face, like a sunrise behind clouds. The lock reset. The tool at the door paused. Cale held still, heart pounding so hard he was sure they could hear it. Sarah whispered, "Again, do it again when they push." Cale swallowed and waited, listening for the moment their patience snapped into force. He realized something then, deep and clear. His quiet life was over. But humans did not survive on the edge by staying quiet forever. They survived by thinking fast, standing firm, and refusing to be taken. And tonight, a human engineer and a hunted alien courier were about to find out what they were made of. The lock panel outside the door gave a sharp, confused beep. The tool on the other side scraped once, then stopped. Cale held his breath, fingers still on the power socket, waiting for the sound of forced entry. It did not come. Sarah shifted slightly under the blanket. Her eyes stayed on the door, but her shoulders eased just a little. "They will not give up," she whispered. "They are patient." "So am I." He slowly slid the cover plate back over the socket and rolled onto his side, keeping the small signal disc hidden in his palm. The room light settled into a dim, steady glow. Outside, heavy steps moved away from the door, fading down the hall. Cale waited a full minute before he moved again. Then another. Only when the station returned to its low, distant hum did he sit up. Sarah pushed herself upright at the same time. "They will circle back," she said. "They always do." Cale swung his legs off the bed. "Then we do not stay." He crossed to the small console near the wall and pulled up the station layout. Dock Ring 9 spread across the screen in simple blue lines. Maintenance corridors, cargo paths, old tunnels marked in yellow. Sarah leaned beside him, close but not touching. "You know this place." "I fix what breaks," Cale said. "That means I see everything." He tapped a path on the screen. "There is an old transfer tunnel here. It used to move cargo bots between rings before they built the main lifts. It is not on public maps anymore. Power is weak, but it still runs." Sarah studied it. "And, cameras? Some," Cale admitted. "But old? Slow. I can loop them." Sarah met his eyes. "Then we go now." Cale grabbed his jacket and a small tool pack. He clipped the signal disc onto his belt, hoping it might help again. He hesitated, then took a compact energy cutter from a locked drawer. He did not like weapons, but he liked being helpless even less. Sarah lifted her overdress from the floor and slung it over her shoulders. It made her look like a normal traveler again, just another person walking the station. Cale opened the door slowly. The hall was empty. The lights flickered softly overhead. Somewhere far away, a transport engine roared, then faded. They stepped out and moved in opposite directions for a few meters, just in case someone was watching from one angle. Then Cale signaled, and they slipped into a narrow maintenance passage behind a loose panel. Inside, the air smelled of dust and warm metal. The corridor was barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Old cables ran along the walls like thick vines. Sarah moved quietly, every step careful. Cale moved with purpose, turning at junctions without slowing. After several turns, Sarah spoke softly. "Why help me?" Cale did not answer right away. He focused on a rusted ladder and climbed down, testing each rung before putting his full weight on it. At the bottom, he finally said, "Because someone is trying to make something disappear." "I do not like that." Sarah considered this. "Most people would protect themselves first." Cale shrugged. "I am." They reached a sealed door with faded warning symbols. Cale pulled out a small device and connected it to the lock. The door hissed open, revealing a wide tunnel, dark and silent. The old transfer path. The floor was smooth metal, worn by decades of cargo machines. Faint lights lined the walls, barely alive. The tunnel curved away into shadow. They stepped inside. Behind them, the door slid shut, leaving only the soft glow of the tunnel lights. Sarah exhaled. "You are calm for someone who just made enemies." Cale gave a dry smile. "I grew up fixing things in storms. Panic makes you miss the loose bolt that gets you killed." They walked for several minutes in silence. Then Sarah spoke again. "You asked about the truth." Cale nodded. "I am still asking." Sarah reached into her belt and pulled out the crystal shard. The faint light inside it moved like slow lightning. "My people are called the Lyrens," she said. "We trade information, routes, signals, safe paths through unstable space. We are neutral, or we were." Kale listened. "There is a group of species," Sarah continued, "who believe humans grow too fast. You adapt, you settle. You protect each other. You do not wait for permission." Kale frowned. "That sounds like a compliment." Sarah's mouth tightened. "They do not mean it as one. They believe if humans spread, the balance of power will shift. So they formed a quiet plan." She held up the crystal. "This holds records, meetings, payment trails, orders to remove human ships in ways that look like accidents. Reactor failures, navigation errors, pirate signals sent at the right time." Kale felt anger spark in his chest. "They have been killing people." "Yes," Sarah said, slowly. Carefully, they reached a junction where the tunnel split. Kale turned left. "Why you?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "I was trusted. I carried copies, but one day I noticed something. Every copy I delivered was altered. Small changes, enough to hide the real source." "So you kept the real one," Kale said. Sarah nodded. "I made a private backup. This one, when they found out, they said it was for security. They said they only wanted to protect me." Kale snorted. "People say a lot of things when they want something." "They took me to a secure station," Sarah said. "They asked questions. The same questions, over and over. They did not hurt me, but they did not let me leave." "How did you escape?" Kale asked. Sarah looked away. "Someone helped. A guard who believed me. He unlocked a door and told me to run. I do not know what happened to him." Kale did not press. Some answers did not need details. The tunnel began to slope upward. The air grew cooler. Kale checked his wrist pad. "We are near the old cargo ring. From there, we can reach a relay tower." Sarah looked at him. "You plan to send this?" "I plan to shout it," Kale said, "as loud as I can." They reached another sealed door. Kale opened it just enough to peek out. The cargo ring was active. Large containers moved along tracks. Workers in bright vests walked in small groups. Security drones floated overhead. Sarah tensed. Too many eyes. Kale scanned the area. There is a blind spot near the tower base. The drones do not look down there because of signal reflection. He pointed. "We move with the containers. When they pass, we pass." They timed their steps, slipping from shadow to shadow. Sarah moved with surprising speed, her long strides smooth and quiet. Halfway across, Kale felt it. The sense of being watched. A drone turned slightly in the air. Kale froze. Sarah froze. The drone hovered, scanning. Kale held his breath. A loud crash sounded across the ring as a container locked into place. The drone drifted toward the noise, its attention pulled away. They moved again. They reached the base of the relay tower, a tall structure filled with cables and blinking lights. The hum of power filled the air. Kale opened a service panel and waved Sarah inside. They climbed a narrow stairwell spiraling upward. At the top, a small platform looked out over the ring. The stars were visible through a wide window, sharp and bright. Kale plugged his wrist pad into the main terminal. If they trace this signal, they will find this station. Sarah nodded. They will come anyway. Once this goes out, hiding will not matter. Kale's fingers moved fast. He set the transmission to burst mode, sending the data in fragments across multiple channels. The terminal beeped. Ready. Sarah held the crystal for a moment longer. If this works, my people will be forced to choose sides. Kale looked at her. So will mine. Sarah placed the crystal into the slot. Kale pressed the send command. The terminal lights flared. Data surged into the system, racing out into space in invisible waves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kale's wrist pad chimed. Incoming signals. Many of them. Sarah leaned closer. Allies? Some, Kale said, and others who just woke up. The tower shook slightly as a distant engine roared. Kale's eyes went to the window. A ship was descending into the cargo ring. Not a trader. Not a shuttle. Sleek. Dark. Armed. Sarah's voice was calm. They found us. Kale closed the terminal and grabbed his energy cutter. He looked at Sarah, then at the stars beyond the glass. The message is out, he said. Now we just have to live long enough to see who answers. Sarah straightened, her fear giving way to something harder and brighter. Side by side, human and alien stood in the humming tower, waiting for the next move in a game that had just become very loud across the galaxy. The armed ship settled into the cargo ring with a low, heavy hum that vibrated through the relay tower's metal frame. Its surface was smooth and dark, marked with no symbols or trade codes. It was not meant to be seen, it was meant to arrive, take what it wanted, and leave no story behind. Kale and Sarah watched from the tower window as a ramp lowered from the ship's side. Figures stepped out. They were tall and broad, wrapped in layered armor that reflected the ring's bright lights in dull, broken shapes. Their helmets were sealed, their movements steady and careful. They spread out in a practiced pattern, two moving forward, one staying back near the ship. Hunters. Sarah's hands curled into fists. They brought a full team. Kale checked the stairwell behind them. We do not stay up here. He led the way down the narrow steps. Halfway down, the tower shook again, harder this time. A distant blast echoed through the ring. They are cutting power, Sarah said. The lights flickered. Kale felt a rush of cold air as ventilation systems slowed. He reached a side door and forced it open. It led into a web of thick cables and support beams behind the tower's main structure. They moved through the tight space, climbing over and under bundles of lines that carried signals across the station. The hum of energy buzzed in Kale's bones. Behind them, boots hit metal. The hunters were fast. Kale spotted a junction box and tore off its panel. Sparks jumped as he crossed two lines with his cutter. Somewhere in the ring, a warning alarm wailed, then died. Sarah glanced back. What did you do? Made a mess, Kale said. I am good at that. They dropped down into a lower maintenance corridor. The floor shook as something heavy moved above them. Sarah led this time, her eyes sharp, her steps light. She ducked into a narrow passage that curved away from the main ring. The air in the tunnel was cold and damp. Old water pipes ran along one wall, dripping slowly into a shallow channel. Kale's wrist pad chimed again. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown fleet signal detected. He stopped. Sarah? She turned. What is it? Kale held up the pad. Someone else is here. Sarah's eyes widened. Friends or enemies? Kale shook his head. Too many to tell. The sound of boots echoed closer. Kale looked down the tunnel. We need a standpoint, somewhere narrow, somewhere they cannot surround us. Sarah pointed ahead. There. The old pressure gate. They ran. The pressure gate was a thick metal door set into the tunnel, half open and rusted in place. Beyond it, the tunnel narrowed into a single-file path with a low ceiling. Kale shoved Sarah through first, then slipped in after her. He turned and pulled on a manual lever. The gate dropped partway, slamming down with a loud crash, leaving only a small opening at the bottom. Not perfect, Kale said, but it will slow them. Sarah knelt beside him. We do not have weapons for a fight. Kale checked his cutter. I have tools. Tools can become a lot of things. The first hunter appeared at the far end of the tunnel. Its helmet lights swept across the walls, sharp and white. It saw the gate. The hunter raised a weapon. Kale pressed the signal dampener against the metal floor and twisted it on. The air seemed to thicken. The hunter's weapon hummed, then sputtered. The light on its helmet flickered. Sarah gasped. It works on their systems. For a little while, Kale said. Not forever. The hunter fired anyway. The shot hit the gate, melting a glowing line across the metal. Kale pulled Sarah back as the second hunter stepped into view. Kale slammed the cutter into a pipe on the wall and ripped it open. Water burst out in a high-pressure spray, filling the narrow space. Sarah understood instantly. She pulled a cable from her belt and jammed it into the exposed wiring nearby. Sparks exploded as water and power met. The hunters staggered back, their armor flashing with warning lights. Kale and Sarah did not wait. They ran down the narrow tunnel, slipping in the water, catching themselves on the walls. The tunnel ended at a small service hatch. Kale forced it open, and they tumbled into a large, dark room. The lights came on slowly, revealing rows of old cargo pods stacked high, covered in dust and faded numbers. Kale recognized the place. Storage bay. Decommissioned. Sarah moved between the pods, staying low. Many places to hide. Kale's wrist pad chimed again. This time, the message was clearer. Human defense fleet. Signal received. Kale's chest tightened. They heard us. Sarah looked at him, hope breaking through her fear. How far? Not close enough, Kale said. But they are moving. A loud crash echoed behind them as the service hatch was forced open. The hunters entered the storage bay. 3 of them. They spread out, scanning the rows of cargo pods. Kale whispered, We do not fight them head-on. Sarah nodded. We make them chase shadows. They split up. Kale moved to the left, climbing onto a pod and crawling along the top. He kicked a loose metal panel down at the far end of the bay. It clanged loudly. 2 hunters turned and moved toward the sound. Sarah appeared on the other side, knocking over a stack of empty crates. The 3rd hunter followed her. Kale dropped down behind the 2 hunters and ran for a control panel near the wall. He slammed his hand on it. The bay's old magnetic cranes came to life with a groan. Huge metal arms swung overhead, chains rattling. Kale grabbed a loose chain and pulled hard. A heavy hook dropped, crashing into the floor between the hunters, sending them stumbling back. Syrah ran past, her voice sharp. "This way!" Kale followed her through a narrow gap between pods. They reached a dead end. Sarah turned, eyes wide. "No exit." Kale scanned the wall. Old launch hatch. He tore at the panel, sparks flying as he cut through the seal. The wall blew outward with a rush of air. Stars filled the opening. Sarah froze. That leads outside. Kale grabbed a small emergency tether from the wall. He clipped one end to Sarah's belt, the other to his own. "We jump," he said. Sarah stared at the stars, then back at Kale. "That is madness." Kale gave a tight smile. "Humans are good at that, too." The hunters appeared at the far end of the bay, weapons raised. Kale did not wait. He jumped. The stars swallowed them. The tether snapped tight, and they swung out into open space, spinning slowly. Sarah cried out, then forced herself to breathe. Below them, the station curved like a giant wheel, lights glowing along its edges. Above them, space stretched endless and dark. Kale pulled on the tether, guiding them toward a small maintenance platform clinging to the station's outer hull. They hit it hard, grabbing onto handholds and pulling themselves in. Kale locked the tether and rolled onto his back, staring at the stars. Sarah lay beside him, chest rising fast. Inside the station, alarms began to sound. Then Kale's wrist pad chimed one more time. A new signal. Multiple human ships jumping in. Bright flashes lit the far side of the ring as ships tore into space around the station, their engines blazing like small suns. Sarah pushed herself up, eyes wide. They came. Kale smiled, breathless. "Told you." We shout loud, humans answer. The hunter's ship lifted off from the cargo ring, turning away from the growing fleet. Sarah looked at Kale, her voice soft. "You did not just save me." Kale looked at the human ships forming a line across the stars. "No, we gave them a reason to stand." Side by side on the cold metal of the station's hull, human and alien watched the sky fill with light, knowing the quiet war in the shadows had just become something the whole galaxy would have to face. The sky around Dock Ring 9 no longer felt empty. Human ships filled the space like a moving wall of steel and light. Their hulls reflected the distant stars. Their engines burned steady and bright, and their formation spoke of order and purpose. They did not rush forward. They held their line. Kale and Sarah watched from the cold maintenance platform as the hunter's ship drifted away, slipping into the dark. It did not fire. It did not turn back. It chose distance over a fight it could not win. Sarah let out a long breath she had been holding for what felt like hours. They ran. Kale nodded. They were not ready to be seen. The station's alarms softened, dropping from sharp warning tones to low, steady signals. Emergency lights turned off one by one as power systems came back online. A small human shuttle detached from one of the larger ships and moved toward the station, slow and careful. Kale checked his tether and stood up. His legs felt weak, but his mind was clear. "Looks like we are not alone anymore," he said. Sarah smiled, a real smile this time, not the tight one she had worn since she entered his room. "You were never alone. You just did not know how many people would stand with you." The shuttle docked nearby. A hatch opened, and 3 humans stepped out wearing light armor and communication gear. Their leader, a tall woman with dark hair pulled back tight, raised a hand. Kale Rains? She called. Kale raised his own hand. That is me. She approached carefully, eyes moving from Kale to Sarah. Commander Hale, Human Defense Fleet. We received a transmission from this station, a data burst that woke up half our network. Kale glanced at Sarah. Good. That was the idea. Hale turned to Sarah. You must be the courier. Sarah nodded. My name is Sarah of the Lyrans. Hale's expression softened. You did something brave, Sarah. Both of you did. Behind Hale, more shuttles began to arrive. Medics, engineers, security teams. The quiet station was no longer quiet. Kale felt strange seeing so many people in a place he had known as empty and forgotten. Hale gestured toward the shuttle. Let's get you inside. We have a lot to talk about. They boarded the shuttle and lifted off from the station's hull. Through the small window, Kale watched Dock Ring 9 grow smaller, just a wheel of light in the dark. Inside the shuttle, a soft hum filled the air. A medic checked Sarah's wrists and shoulders, scanning for injuries. You are safe now, the medic said gently. Sarah nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window, on the ships outside. Safe is a new word for me. The shuttle docked with a large human cruiser. The doors opened into a wide, clean hallway filled with quiet movement and soft voices. Kale had never been on a ship like this. Everything was bright, solid, and alive with purpose. They were led into a briefing room. A large screen on one wall showed maps of space, lines and markers moving slowly across it. Hale stood at the front. We are receiving your data now. It is a lot. A man at a console spoke up. Multiple species involved, trade networks, hidden funding routes. It goes deep, Sarah stepped forward. My people believed in balance. We thought staying neutral kept us safe. We were wrong. Hale nodded. Neutrality only works when everyone respects it. Kale leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what happens now? Hale looked at him. Now we stop pretending these disappearances are accidents. Now we talk to our allies. We show them the truth. And if this group tries to keep working in the shadows, we shine a light so bright they cannot hide. The screen shifted, showing nearby systems. Human ships moved, forming new routes and patrol lines. Sarah watched, her eyes wide. You move so fast. Hale smiled slightly. We learned a long time ago. When you wait, someone else decides your future. There was a pause in the room. Kale felt it then, a strange weight in his chest. He had been a repair worker, a man who fixed broken machines and went to sleep in a small room with a narrow window. Now, maps of the galaxy moved because he had twisted a power socket and opened his door. Hale turned to him. You could have stayed quiet, Kale. You did not. Quiet did not feel right. Hale studied him for a moment. Not just soldiers, builders, thinkers, people who see systems and know how to make them work. Kale blinked. I fix old stations. Hale smiled. You just helped fix something much bigger. Sarah looked at Kale. You gave my people a chance to choose who they want to be. Kale met her eyes. You gave mine a reason to pay attention. A message chimed on the console. Allied signals incoming, the operator said. Multiple fleets. They want to know what is happening. Hale nodded. Let them in. The screen filled with symbols and faces from different species. Some looked calm. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid. Hale spoke clearly. We have evidence of a hidden campaign against human colonies and trade routes. This data comes from a Lyran courier who risked her life to bring it to us. We are sharing it now. Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was steady. This is not about humans alone. This is about anyone who believes truth can be erased quietly. It cannot. Not anymore. The room was silent as the data flowed. Kale watched the faces on the screen change. Confusion, realization, shock. A voice came through, deep and slow. If this is true, then none of us are safe from being next. Hale nodded. That is why we stand together. The meeting ended with no cheers, no loud promises, just agreement. Movement. Ships turning. Messages sent. Afterward, Kale found himself standing in a quiet observation deck, looking out at the stars. Sarah joined him. They will remember this, she said. They will tell stories. Kale shook his head. I do not need a story. I just want my station back. Sarah smiled. You will never see it the same way. Kale thought about that. A few hours later, a small transport was prepared to take Sarah to a Lyran diplomatic ship. They stood in the hangar, the air warm with engine heat. Sarah turned to Kale. You opened your door when you did not have to. Kale scratched the back of his head. You walked through it. Sarah reached into her belt and pulled out a small, smooth token, shaped like a simple star. She pressed it into his hand. If you ever need my people, show this. Kale closed his fingers around it. I hope I do not. Sarah laughed softly. So do I. They parted there. Sarah boarded her transport. Kale watched it lift away, becoming a small light among many. Later, Kale returned to Dockring 9. The station was different now. New security drones patrolled the halls. Fresh lights shone where old ones had flickered. People nodded to him as he passed, some with curiosity, some with quiet respect. Kale unlocked his door and stepped back into his small room. The bed was still there. The window still showed the stars like scattered salt. But Kale was not the same man who had sat there in silence. He set the star-shaped token on his shelf beside his tools. Outside, a human patrol ship passed by, its engines glowing softly. The galaxy was still vast, still dangerous. But somewhere in the quiet space between stars, a simple truth had spread. When the door opened and the choice was made, one human did not look away, and that was enough to change the direction of many worlds.